Alright, so One Piece chapter 1017 released there today, and it was a pretty solid chapter, to be honest. A pretty not an amazing chapter, I must say. It was not much happened, but I liked it quite a bit. There was a lot of action per se, little bits of it here and there, and we got to see bits and pieces of fights that we haven't seen in a while, like Dogstorm versus Jack, and Jinbei versus Who's Who, which we'll get to in a bit because that was the last thing of the chapter. But the chapter started out with Momo and Tama, or not Momo and Tama, just Tama giving the orders, right? And that turned the tables immediately because they showed how they did it before she gave the orders. They showed how dire it was with the gifters attacking the Straw Hats, and then they showed the contrast with Tama giving the orders. So that was very well done, I must say, the way Oda did that. Um, just to show the contrast. So what's it now? Is it like 15,000 to 77,500 or something? Or no, it must be like 19,500. Yeah, it's probably more like 19,500 to 7,500 at this point. Was it? Do they have 20,000? Was that the last known number? I can't remember. And I think there's 500 gifters or something. Was it 500 or 5,000 gifters? I honestly don't know, but it was either one of those numbers. So it's a pretty drastic increase or on to the side of the Straw Hats anyway. But it was so that's basically what this chapter was for. But we also found out something very interesting, which I wanted to talk about for the remainder of this kind of discussion, because it was a bit crazy. So we found out that Who's Who was a former CP9 member, kind of like a rival to Rob Lucci. So, but he messed up a kind of transportation of a devil fruit to the world government, and that fruit turned out to be the gum gum fruit. So this is quite interesting for many reasons. So first thing, the government wanted the gum gum fruit, which is a very interesting idea. Now it could have just been as simple as, they collect devil fruits so other people can't have them, which would also make sense. But then again, it wouldn't bear mentioning specifically about the gum gum fruit, would it? And Oda wouldn't put it in if it was that important. If it was something to kind of put in the sidelines, they'd probably mention it in like an SBS or something. So this definitely is serious business. I just don't know where he's kind of going with this. Because it definitely wasn't Roger's fruit. We know that. We'd never seen him use it. So it's nothing to do with Roger or anything like that, him having that devil fruit. So it's not like, oh, that this was the former Pirate King's devil fruit or something. There are a few options. It could just be it was there's two people it could have been that I can think of. It could have been the original Joy Boy's devil fruit. So like the Joy Boy from 800 years ago, it could have been his devil fruit. And Emu specifically asked for it to be delivered to the world government for safekeeping, but Shanks infiltrated it. And that would also make sense because Shanks seems to know a lot about the world, and it would make sense if he knew that he couldn't let the Gum Gum fruit in other people's hands. It would also make a little more sense why he was more worried about Luffy having the Gum Gum fruit than I think he should have been if he was around devil fruits that much in his life. So it makes sense why he would be a bit more worried in the first chapter than he should have been, considering he was around devil fruits his entire life. And though the idea here is that if it is the original Joy Boy, it really pushes home the idea of Luffy being kind of the reincarnation, which I'm not a big fan of. I honestly just hope it was his devil fruit or something. And oh, you've got the hat and the fruit. Like that's a cool coincidence, if they're gonna do it, I'd be like, oh, that's a cool coincidence. I don't really want it to be he was destined to be this or whatever. Like if it was a thing where every D had this potential, and he would just happen to be the one to pull it off, that would make sense. Because a lot of Ds, particularly the human ones, look fairly similar. They tend to have black hair, at least when they were young, or a similar type of hair. And you could say, well, all the D's are related to Joy Boy. And actually, one of my mates had a very interesting theory about Joy Boy and the D's. So he said the D's aren't all related to Joy Boy. The D clan are descendants of the original Joy Boy's pirate crew. That was the idea. So every single one of them is a descendant of a person on Joy Boy's pirate crew if he had one. Which I think is a very interesting way to look at things, because you could say the ancient kingdom is most likely a mix of all the different races, kind of Big Mom's dream. I don't know. I think about that sometimes, and that would make a lot of sense, right? Because let's say they were all segregated after the world government took into power, which would also make a lot of sense, because they didn't want the races banding together again to reform the ancient kingdom. So that would make a ton of sense, to be honest. Although I do like that theory, again, I'm not the biggest fan on the destined idea. It just doesn't sit with me at all. I don't like the idea of they're destined to do something. I'd rather it's like through his own effort he was able to do a job that was not fated, but that was needed to be done to save them from the world government. I don't want it to be like he was destined to do this, because I feel like that cheapens Luffy's character a lot, to be perfectly honest. Honestly, I was having a thought though the other day, and I know this might not make sense, but what if the ancient kingdom is Alabasta? And this is another theory of mine. I know we're going off topic here, but it's gonna get around here now. It's all about Joy Boy and this stuff. But my opinion was the ancient kingdom was Alabasta, right? And basically, when they said the 20 kingdoms formed, the Nefertari kingdom was like a rebellion government. You know what I mean? Kind of like the IRA or something like that, you know? And then they joined together with the 19 countries of the world government, and were like, you know, we're gonna support you. And they did that to get power and be able to become the leaders of Alabasta. And then when this whole war was over, they were there's two ways they could have gone about it. Either they realized the wrongdoings of their decision and decided to stay in Alabasta and right their wrongs, or they put so much effort in to get the country they didn't want to leave it behind, which would also make sense. But the other option for, like, this is all stuff about Joy Boy and the theories that kind of my friends and I were thinking of. It's not necessarily relating to the Gum Gum fruit, but I think it's self-explanatory that it could have been Joy Boy's original fruit at some point, because it definitely couldn't have been Emu's, because Emu is obviously still alive, unless Emu is also a title passed down, but I highly doubt it, honestly. But it could also have been, and I know people were saying Rox's devil fruit would have been the darkness fruit, which makes more sense. But Rox's fruit could have also been the Gum Gum fruit, because that would also make a lot of sense for why the government would have wanted it, because, you know, it's the fruit of Rox Beck, the worst criminal in the world. And it would also make sense then again why Shanks would want it as well, because he obviously knows about the God Valley incident, and kind of, if all current theories are right, he was born on God Valley. That is the current theory, I think. So that would also make sense why he's interested in it. Now, I think this one is very unlikely. I think the original Joy Boy theory is more likely, because, you know, Kaido has never mentioned anything about the Gum Gum fruit. Neither has Big Mom. And the only thing he's mentioned is Gum Gum a what now? Do you know what I mean? So I don't think there's anything relating to them there. But it was a very interesting chapter. And just before, because I talked mostly about the Gum Gum fruit idea, just let's move on to something else real quick. So we see there that they're kind of trying to reinforce that Kinemon and Kiku are dead, because we see Momonosuke crying, and I don't feel like he put so much focus on it if they were still alive. So I think they're dead now. I think they're almost confirmed to be dead at this point. I'm pretty sure. I'm like 99% sure at this point. But we will see. Anyway, another great chapter indeed it was, and Who's Who was quite the interesting development and all his shit involved, so I hope we see more of that. We might get a more focus on all the fights next time. No break next week, so that is cool. We'll get more next week. But on to the rest of the chapter though, because I just realized there are a few things I want to talk about that we're not relating to that gum fruit idea. There was a pretty good few tidbits, kind of sprinkled in there throughout this chapter. Like, if you think about it, we now know the name of the group that Judge Vegapunk and so we're all a part of, right? It was well, it was a Judge Vegapunk. Was Caesar a part of it? No, Caesar wasn't a part of it. But it was called Mads. Right? Now I don't know if that was just the name of it or if that's like an acronym, so that might be something important. But it was called Mads. And that's a sweet bit of information. Not too important, but it was a neat little information drop we can use. We might become important later on, which is really interesting. So and also the way Queen talks about Judge makes it seem like he believes himself to be smarter than Judge, which I know we already could have inferred, but it's interesting to kind of get semi confirmation when he's talking about Judge's brat, for example. Also another thing that is like, what could it be? Like, that is the question. Like, what could MAD stand for? Mental addictive dickheads, or I don't know. Men. I don't know. It has to be like, it has to be something important because it could just be MADS, but I kind of feel like it's an acronym for something. But I cannot decide what I think it is. But the more interesting part of this chapter was, looks like Chopper's got his own gear third. Because when he does the 30 minutes for Monster Point, it seems like he goes down to like micro Chopper. Like, to me it seemed like that anyway. I know you could say that was just his normal form, but to me it looked like he was like extra small. It looked like the hat he was wearing was as big as his own body, which was very weird. So I feel like he now has his own gear third form, which is really cool. And yeah, I mean, I like the idea of they kind of made a way now for Zoro to get back in the fight. So I feel like, okay, that's Zoro back in the fight, and we're gonna get a Zoro and Sanji team up. I am dead serious with that. I think that is a guarantee because they show that in the opening. I feel like Chopper's gonna team up with Frankie, Zoro's gonna team up with Sanji, and then what was the other one? I know Brooke and Robin were there in the opening, so we have that already, and we have Nami and Usopp. So that's a good duo, and then Luffy and Yamato. So I think that, is there anyone I'm missing? Like, is Jinbei gonna be the only one to fight alone? So who am I missing here? Could Yamato go off and fight? No. That I have to be missing some. I have to be missing someone. So I'm not sure. But it would be a bit weird to have Jinbei be the only one who's fighting 1-on-1. So maybe Yamato leaves Luffy once Luffy gets back up to fight against Who's Who, and then later on, all the Straw Hats converge on Kaido, and we have a big like Oars like team up. Which again, I think the anime is hinting with its opening, and that's where my shit's going off right now. I do think if everything else doesn't happen, we're definitely gonna get that Frankie and Chopper and Zoro and Sanji team ups. I think that's the most likely, and I think with this chapter kind of giving a shoe-in way for Zoro to heal up, I think that's pretty likely at this point. This chapter was honestly pretty good. There was a lot more in it than you'd think after the first half of the chapter. But there was a lot of cool stuff. We finally got to see both Who's Hybrid Form and Queen's Hybrid Form, which were both really cool, I must add. And also I thought a funny thing, actually. Oda keeps mentioning how this is a war arc, yeah, and I'm not about to say like this is the big climactic war that's supposed to make Marineford look cute. I'm not saying that. It is cool to have another war arc though, something that's legitimately considered a war by Oda anyway. So like this is the Onigashima War, and like I think that's cool. You know, this is like the Paramount War. Like this is like I wouldn't say this is the paramount war for Luffy. For Luffy, like where Luffy takes the place of Whitebeard. But at the same time, like this is the place. This is the war where Luffy can show he can take on another force and defeat them. So this is a war for Luffy. This is his first proper war as a proper leader, and I think that is really cool. Because when he came into Paramount War, he was not the leader. He was not kind of the main focus of the war. He was just there kind of trying to save his brother. He wasn't contributing really that much. But fair, this is the first war he is in as a pirate that proves his kind of abilities. And I think that is really, really cool. And I feel like this will prove his abilities. And then he'll show them to the world when he has the big war after he finds the One Piece. Which I am really looking forward to at this point. There's so much shit I'm looking forward to in One Piece right now, and I like how this is considered a war, and not just like a Yonko takeover. This is considered an all-out war, which I really appreciate. For Luffy's character, I feel like it does a lot, and also for the Straw Hats. This is their first proper actual war, you know what I mean? You could say Alabasta was a war, which it was. It was a civil war, but they weren't really getting involved in the war, were they? They were just fighting Crocodile Pacifically. The war was being done by is it Kazuya and then the Baroque Works team. But I think that's the best thing for me this chapter has done, because we haven't got expanded on the Gum Gum Fruit analogy, but I feel like they mentioned war once again, and I feel like that is really good because it's reaffirming that this is indeed a war. You know what I mean? This isn't like just a Yonko takeover. This is an entire big war. This should be considered a war arc. You know what I mean? And I really appreciate that because this means a lot for Luffy's character. It means this is the first war he is commanding, and then we will see his development throughout this war and see how well of a leader he is, commanding a alliance of people throughout a war. And then it looks like now the Grand Fleet will show up, because if the gifters are about 500 at this point, I talked about this earlier, but the gifters are about 500 on their side, so that's 7,500 now. And then if I think the Grand Fleet is 5,500, isn't it, or something like that, and so then that would be 2,000 on Luffy's side at that point, right? And imagine those odds. Would it like there be not 2,000 on Luffy's? What am I saying? I was taken away there. What am I doing, fucking twat? That would be 12,000 or 13,000 on Luffy's side, which would be amazing. That would really temper the odds a bit, you know what I mean, and be really good for the final war, the final war of Wano, and kind of, so it'd be 13,000 against 20,000, or I guess 19,500 at this point. So I think that's how it's gonna end at this point. I think that is kind of showing that it will be the Grand Fleet showing up to even the odds out even more, and then they take out the rest of them. Although I have to say, just before I end this though, why the fuck can't they use Conqueror's Hockey? Because I'm sure the waiters aren't that fucking, great, and the gifters and all that, they aren't like that will-powered. But yet they can't use Conqueror's Hockey to take them out. Like, he took out 50,000 people at Fishman Island. So why can't he do the same here? I understand the Toby Ropo and the Flying Six and all that, and the officers, but the pleasures, the waiters, and the gifters, why can't he just knock them out with Conqueror's Hockey? Surely Luffy can do that. And if not Luffy, surely Kid can do that. Does Law have Conqueror's Hockey? I know Kid does. I'm pretty sure Kid does, right? I think so. Was it mentioned if Kid has Conqueror's Hockey? I actually do not know if it was. Oh, this chapter ended up being really good. I was not expecting it to be this good, because the first half seemed a bit iffy, just kind of catching up with everyone. But now we actually got a really good chapter. So, I know break next week. Let's go.